Happy Monday, folks. Welcome to Second City Sports Zoom style.
Zoom style.
All right, all right. Somewhat of a kind of a fall-like day here in Chicago. It's been very fall-like these last couple of days, guys. I'm Lakeena McGee. You follow me at Keena McGee on Twitter, at Keena_McGee on the Instagram.
You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at SidKid80. Once again, at SidKid80. That's SIDKID80. That's SIDKID80.
And you can follow me on Twitter at TruthAndReason_. And you can follow the show's Twitter handle at 2NDCSCHI. Follow us, we follow back.
All right, guys. We got a full slate we got a lot to talk about these next couple of hours, so let's get right to it. The NBA in a bubble. There was a great weekend slate of games. The latest one was last night, Houston with a great comeback win against the Bucks, a game that was on ABC. And for what I can, even though the Rays haven't been out yet, but it looks like the Rays did very well. Also, all the NBA in the bubble games have been doing very well for the various networks. So what have you guys liked so far about this NBA bubble restart?
It's been very competitive, as we talked about in our last podcast, Lakeena, when we had Matt Peck on for NBC Sports Chicago. If you guys missed that episode, just go back to the last episode on WARR, which kicks you over to Spotify and all other podcast platforms to catch that last podcast show. But we knew that these games were going to be competitive because these guys have been off the last 3 or 4 months. New Orleans and Utah, along with the Lakers and Clippers, set the tone on Thursday. And, of course, they carried over to Friday with that classic Mavericks-Rockets game. We'll talk about that, I'm sure, at some point. But last night's game between Houston and Milwaukee, it was, I'm not going to say one for the ages, but it was pretty much up there, probably the best game of the weekend, I'll say. And you also had the Lakers and Toronto. Will break that down, too, at some point. But back to Rockets and Bucks. As I said all year long, guys, Houston, they are a great regular season team. I just don't see, even though it was a great win last night, I just don't see them advancing past the second round of the playoffs. As of right now, can you tell me that they are good enough to beat the Clippers? I say no. Are they good enough to beat the Lakers, even though they have a couple of guys out due to opt-outs? No. But they do look good individually. Russell Westbrook came up big last night. James Harden did his thing. On the other side for Milwaukee, everybody wants to shoot them in as an Eastern Conference representative for the NBA Finals. I say no. I don't want to base everything off of one game, but you saw a great example last night. Do you trust them coming down the stretch? No.
Well, yeah, for me, I mean, I'm just glad basketball is back, in a sense. I'm glad to see it this past week. I got to catch a couple of games. I didn't catch the Houston and Milwaukee game last night, but again, I heard it was a real classic. We were talking about this just before we went live here. I also don't want to put too much on one game, Sydney, but I still like the Bucks coming out of the East. At least at this point, I know Toronto was still playing well. And speaking of Toronto, they just beat the Lakers the other day. Kyle Lowry dropping 33 points. I was able to see a lot of that game. Now, which actually leads me to the Lakers because I'm kind of concerned about them at this point. LeBron hasn't looked sharp, I guess we can say so far early in this somewhat quote unquote bubble. I know Anthony Davis is dealing with a couple of nicks and injuries here, like he kind of always is throughout the NBA season. They've had a few opt-outs, but Kyle Kuzma's playing well so far, so I think that's going to boost them. But obviously with Rondo being out, and a couple of guys not there for the Lakers, I'm a bit concerned for them coming down the stretch and as we get into these playoffs. But Houston, I mean, I you know how I feel about Houston, Lakeena, and Sydney. I mean, they're the team that I love to talk about when it comes to the regular season and playoffs. I mean, I feel the same way, Sid. They've been a prove-it-to-me team for the past 4 to 5 years now. I actually think their window is completely closed. I don't trust James Harden or Russell Westbrook in a playoff situation. I just don't. I think they're two players that are great individually, but when it comes to a team game, when it really matters, I just think they're too much of a one-on-one type of a player to really carry a team through through a tough playoffs, and especially how it'll be in the West. So again, I mean, I'm glad basketball is back. I still kind of like the Bucks. I mean, Giannis Antetokounmpo. What else can you say about him? I mean, the guy is just a scoring and rebounding machine, and he's added some length, some range, I should say, to his jump shot. He's starting to hit threes with a lot more consistency now. So I think that's going to help.
I would say for me with the NBA, the games have been really exciting. The games are really competitive. I mean, so we talked about it with Matt on Friday's podcast, 153, 149. The Rockets were able to pull that out against the Mavs in overtime on Friday. And, the over, if you took the under, just under 300, then I guess, you took the over, that's, hey, you won. Well, if you took the over. So, you won. You had a nice Friday night there, but, look, I mean, the Rockets looked really good. I mean, so far, so good. I'm not worried about the Lakers yet or LeBron because, look, LeBron is up there now. He's 36. It's going to take him a couple of games to kind of get back into, like, LeBron shape. So I'll let him slide there. Toronto's look really good, but I think, people are still like, yeah, you know what? You guys might not be able to do it in the playoffs as Kawhi's not there anymore. Another probably one of the most surprising teams I'll say is the Thunder. You saw what they did to the Jazz. I mean, Billy Donovan. I mean, we'll get to the being named one of the coaches of the year with Mike Budenholzer from Milwaukee. Should have been Nick Nurse. Should have been up there too. But hopefully we'll talk about that in a bit. But I mean, CP3 looks like he's found a fountain of youth. I mean, they're still like Steven Adams is doing his thing. I mean, that Oklahoma City Thunder, I mean, people thought that they were going to rebuild and that Paul was not going to want to be there, but they're showing you why that they're right there near the top of in the top 4 or 5 of the Western Conference. So they've actually looked really impressive. What other impressions have you guys have with the restart?
TJ Warren, after all those years with the Phoenix Suns, now with the Indiana Pacers, is going to participate in the playoffs for the first time in his career, putting up 53 points against Joel Embiid in the Philadelphia 76ers. My goodness, Philadelphia is having problems. Once again, I'm not going to base it all over one game, but if they don't get together come playoff time, your head coach was almost out last year. He'll be out for sure this time. Congrats to TJ Warren. He had 53 points, a career high, and that 127-121 win over Philadelphia on Saturday. I did check out a little bit of that Jazz OKC game, Lakeena. It was not much of a contest. And like you said, the Thunder have been one of the most surprising teams in this season, perhaps the most surprising team in the NBA this year. I expected people to get traded left and right at the trade deadline. Obviously, that didn't happen. You could tell the acquisition of Chris Paul via trade over the summer is really paid dividends for that young ball club.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, Chris Paul is the definition of a leader, and obviously being a point guard, that's what you want. And they play well as a team, and that's something that I know that was sort of a mantra of Billy Donovan, and let's just call it what it is. When Russell Westbrook was there, I mean, the guy is great, but I don't want to say the numbers are hollow, but Russell Westbrook's numbers didn't always translate to winning, and CP3 and those young athletic guys down there in OKC, Billy Donovan's got them playing really well. Again, big shout out to TJ Warren. TJ Warren gets buckets though. Yeah. He's been getting buckets ever since NC State. So
yep. Yeah, that's true. Very true.
He's a hooper, but absolutely congratulations to him on a career high 53 points, and which also brings me to the 76ers. You know how I love to talk about them as well. I have lost complete faith in them. I really have. There is no excuse for the reason that they're playing this way. I've been saying it even before the COVID lockdown and break, but they're fundamentally flawed. I think they're going to need to make not only some coaching changes, but some personnel changes. And everybody wants to say that it's Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons. These are the guys you can win with. I'm just not sure anymore. I want to give them the benefit of the doubt. I want to give them time, but they've kind of had enough of it. So I'm not sure where they go from here. But the Lakers are a bit of a surprise, just how LeBron has played. But I'm also in agreement with you, Lakeena. I think he'll get it together. Obviously, he's too good not to. But other than that, again, I'm glad for basketball being back, and we got some great games coming up tonight too. Starting off in a few minutes, actually.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we got some afternoon games coming up. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But I would say probably the most disappointing team I would say is New Orleans.
Mm.
A lot of people thought that maybe they could, be right there for that last playoff spot, but so far it doesn't look like to be the case. I mean, it's sort of like maybe Zion's not happy that he's on pretty much a minutes restriction, and then there was some other stuff that's been going on too. So, who's been the most disappointing so far in this restart, guys?
Can you put a coin toss up in the air between the Portland Trail Blazers and the Memphis Grizzlies? I think the Grizzlies won one of their games so far, but Portland, I was watching that game on Sunday afternoon against the Boston Celtics. They had a chance to win in the last second, but they just could not make the key plays when they had to. So I think Portland number one, and then New Orleans, like you said, Lakeena number two for me.
For me, number one, it's obviously the 76ers. With their schedule, they were supposed to get off to a good start. And I know it's only a couple of games in, but I believe they lost both of them. I'd have to check the record again. But for me, it's the 76ers. I would have to say the Pelicans as well. I think they're a little too talented to kind of come off to a sluggish start that they have, but they have a bit of a window with how this sort of restart schedule is set up. I know they have to be just within a few games of that eighth spot to have a sort of play-in type of tournament that'll sort of allow them to get into the playoffs. I'm a little unfamiliar on the details of it, so I don't want to say anything wrong. But I would have to sort of say again, a little bit the Lakers, just with LeBron and how he's been playing. The 76ers are a little bit of a disappointment as well.
Well, so I'll say New Orleans, Portland, and Philly. Those are sort of like my three disappointments so far. But you never know, though. The way they have it set up is that they can probably easily turn it around. I mean,
Yeah.
Toronto's got Miami in a few minutes. Denver and OKC, Indiana and Washington, Memphis and New Orleans, San Antonio. We haven't talked about them. They've looked good so far against the aforementioned Sixers and the Lakers and Utah. So that should be a good one too. So definitely some good ones today.
Yeah, those games should be fun. And I'm looking forward to that second game on ESPN tonight between the Lakers and Utah. Utah hasn't looked that great on the other side for the Lakers. They pretty much had the number one seed in the Western Conference sold in. LeBron James and Anthony Davis, they'll get it together come playoff time, but we're just going to step in and fill in those minutes as far as coming off the bench, because we all know that Rajon Rondo won't be available for the first round of the playoffs. But who's going to take up those minutes off the bench? Alex Caruso, can he continue to play big? J.R. Smith, Dion Waiters, who both of them were picked up Dion Waiters was picked up in early March, and J.R. Smith he's replacing Avery Bradley. So both of them or one of those guys will have to step up and step in big. So I'm looking forward to see which role players for the Lakers going to step up between now and the start of the playoffs next week.
Yeah, looking forward to the game tonight, Jazz and Lakers. I'm thinking Donovan Mitchell is going to be angry about the way he played the other day against OKC. The whole team didn't play well, but he in particular did not have a good night. I'm looking for a breakout game for him.
Should be fun. I mean, like Jason said, there's only 1 week, maybe a week and a half of like regular season games before the playoffs start. So this'll get very interesting. So these teams are like at the bottom trying to get into that playoff spot. The Portland, New Orleans, Memphis, those teams are gonna have to get it together. And as for the East, I mean, who you guys think in the East will get those last couple of spots? Like there's like one spot left that actually is sort of up for grabs. So who do you guys think gets it?
Yeah. So right now the Orlando Magic is number 7, and Brooklyn's falling back to 8th. But it looks like it's going to be that way. I just cannot see Washington winning enough games to catch up. I don't see it. Maybe I'm wrong, but I just don't see it. They were too far back when this whole shutdown occurred anyway. So it looks like Orlando will probably be the number 7 seed and Brooklyn number 8. Besides Jamal Crawford, who they picked up before the bubble, do you know who's on their roster right now who's active? Because half their guys are out.
Exactly, for various reasons, whether it's injuries or some of them opted out. So who knows? What about you, Jason?
I think it's gonna be 7 the Magic and 8 the Brooklyn Nets as well. But man, you got to feel for Jonathan Isaac from the Orlando Magic to his ACL last night. So just send a shout out for a speedy recovery there. Good young player.
And for all of you who say, well, that's what he gets for not kneeling with his teammates and this and that, it's karma. Shame on you.
Yeah.
Shame on you guys.
I'm not even bringing that up. I'm not even going there.
Yeah.
It's just ridiculous. All right. So where do you want to go to next? A lot of places we can go.
Baseball.
Baseball? Okay, let's do that. We'll start with your Cubs, Jason. 7-2. They have the best record, the second best record in the NL. They actually are the only Central team in the NL that is over 500. I'm seeing some Cubs fans are kind of shocked that that the Cubs are even at 7-2, especially with the bullpen issues and everything else. So, okay, Jason, people are wondering, how are the Cubs 7-2?
Well, I'll tell you how, Lakeena. They're doing it with some strong starting pitching. That's for doggone sure. And they're doing it with some timely hitting, which is kind of how you want how you want a good baseball team to be. Now, we've talked ad nauseum about this freaking bullpen, this effing bullpen of the Chicago Cubs. I am really, really, really concerned about Craig Kimbrell. And I know you kind of called it, Sid, and I hate to give you the credit for it, man, but I thought I could kind of throw away last year, right? Because, he was signed after a hiatus. I can kind of see the issues from last year, but it seems to have just translated over, and he has no movement on his fastball anymore. And it's a center cut fat steak for Major League Baseball hitters. And if he doesn't have the movement or find the movement to his fastball, he's going to get hit, and he's going to get hit hard. And he's been getting hit hard so far in this early part of this sprint to the finish, hashtag sprint to the finish for the MLB season. And you've seen Coach David Ross stay away from him, just plain not use him the past couple of games. And it's been shaky, but Mr. Jeffers has looked good so far. A couple of other young arms that they have in the bullpen have looked okay so far, but they're going to have to find some consistency, whether it be with Craig Kimbrell or without it. And but so far, so good. Again, strong starting pitching. I can't say enough about the season so far, the start that Tyler Chatwood has had. John Lester has looked good. He's looked consistent, even though he's had a dip in velocity. I mean, that's kind of expected at this stage of his career, but he still looked really good. And you have to play well against your schedule. I mean, it is what it is, people. You have to win these games. They're on the schedule. You can't lose them. That's for doggone sure. And this is what the Cubs have been doing so far.
Yeah, you can't apologize if you're a Cubs fan or a Cubs player about the schedule, because you knew that coming into the now shortened 60-game season. You're supposed to beat up on the teams that you're supposed to be there below 500. Now, with you, Jason, that the starting pitching has been tremendous, probably with the exception of you, Darvish. Tyler Chatwood has been a surprise this year.
Better outing yesterday, though, or the last time out, though, Sid. Better outing.
But besides that, Cal Hendricks has been on fire. Tyler Chatwood has had a surprising year. John Lester still there as a veteran. Will he break down like he has the past couple of years? We shall see. But that start pitch opens up the office. The office has been carried by two guys, Anthony Rizzo and Javi Baez has been on fire these last few days.
And this has been without Chris Bryant too. I mean, Chris Bryant, he's feeling better now, thank goodness. He tested negative for COVID, so he should be back with them soon. Look, this is not like bonus points. This is not like the BCS in college football where you got to have little style points. As long as you win, especially in this kind of season where you're only going to have 60 games, as long as you win, like Jason, like you said, as long as you win against the teams in your schedule, you're doing okay. And I gotta say though, Baez had the walk off last night. I mean, did you guys like how it's set up? Because of course, in the 10th inning, you start with the runner at second, and then everything else. And if you score, then everything else. So how do you guys like that sort of concept with this new rule change?
I guess for this year, I'm okay with it. Thank goodness they won't have that during the playoffs, so they'll be scrapped. Thank goodness. Now, will they have this going forward? I'm not sure. We'll see during the off season, but I'm okay with it only because of the situation we're in right now. So I really don't have no problem with it. You can argue it either way if you can, but I'm not going to go down that path. We just have to accept it for what it is.
In an effort to make games more exciting and a little shorter, especially when it comes to extra innings, I have no problem with this idea whatsoever. I think it forces teams to, to really buckle down when it comes to how they're going to set up their matchups later on in games and who they're going to play out in the field later on in games as well, because it's usually the guy that makes the last out the previous inning that starts on second base. So all of those are just little factors that I kind of love. I'm also, though, with you, Sydney. I don't want it for the playoffs. I wouldn't like a game decided like that necessarily. But so far, I like it.
Yeah, same here. I think, look, as long as you don't have it during the playoffs, for this kind of season, I think you're going to have to do something a little bit kooky, a little bit wacky, and make it exciting. So there have been a couple of games that have been like that this year. So I'm fine with it, too, as long as you don't do it during the playoffs. That's fine with that. Now, in the NL, I mean, Atlanta's looked really good. They've won 5 in a row. The Dodgers are the Dodgers. The Rockies have had a nice start, even though, listen, they played mostly not so good teams, so they can't help that. But they've done well so far. I like their pitching. Who in the NL has impressed you guys so far?
Yeah, you took
start
team.
off.
Go ahead, Sid. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Jay. Okay. The Dodgers, as usual. This is kind of what we expected, right? So the Dodgers, at least on roster from top to bottom, they are the best team, perhaps the best team in baseball. So I'm not surprised by them. Like you said, Lakeena and Atlanta, they beat up on the trashy New York Mets. I know we'll get to them more in a second. But the two best teams in the National League right now are the Cubs and the Dodgers. Unfortunately, we can't see them this year in the regular season due to the special scheduling. But are these two teams on a crash course for perhaps the NLCS for the third time in the last 5 years? We shall see.
Well, guys, you remember what I said last week about shortened seasons and just one team out there that could surprise a whole lot of us and come out of nowhere and play well and possibly get into the playoffs?
Mm-hmm.
Which one of us had the Baltimore Orioles as possibly being one of those teams? Raise your hand. I'll wait.
I know I didn't.
I know I didn't. I didn't either.
Yeah, me either. That's my point.
I don't think no one did either.
No one. Not even Baltimore. Not even Baltimore people.
But at this point, nonetheless, they are 5-3, and again, good starts are gonna matter. We're only talking about 60 games here. I'm not sure if they can keep this type of thing going, right? I mean, I don't think any of us are really, but they're 5-3. If they can sort of keep a even somewhat 500 pace the rest of the way, they might make the playoffs. And nobody had that going into the shortened season. So for me, it is definitely the Baltimore Orioles again. I don't know if they can sustain it. It remains to be seen. But so far, again, like you said, Lakeena, probably not even Baltimore players predicted getting off to such a good start.
I follow a lot of Baltimore media people. John Oran, who does great work for Sports Business Journal, he has a lot of the sports media news, stuff like that. I'm sure, listen, he's been on Twitter saying, look, I didn't expect this to happen. I don't think no one in Baltimore did either. So it's sort of interesting how, listen, we said this before, that once this schedule kind of came up, we were wondering, like, who would benefit from this type of scheduling. And it looks like so far, again, it's early, but Baltimore looks like, they've done well. I mean, maybe in about a week or two they'll probably be at the bottom, but right now they're a 5-2, so they can't. No one can take that start away from them. Wait, since we didn't, before we get to the White Sox, before we talk about the AL, back to AL, Joe Kelly hitting Carlos Correa, and did you guys like that move? I mean, he got suspended for 8 games. I don't think there's been an update on his status or whether his appeal's been accepted or not. But for me, I know some people were saying that, well, he shouldn't have thrown at his head. But again, no one else was going to do anything. And you really thought the Dodgers were the ones that were affected by this. So I don't understand. Look, I'm fine with Joe. I'm team Joe Kelly all the way on this one. What do you guys think?
Same here, Lakeena. I know what Joe Kelly is trying to do. I missed the part initially when he tried to hit Alex Bregman. I know that some people claim that the ball, quote unquote, got away, but we all know what his intent was. And right now, as you mentioned, Lakeena, as of this podcast, he's still playing. According to Major League Baseball rules, you're allowed to play during your appeal. So probably after this is all said and done, he'll probably get a game or two knocked off. He'll still be suspended, but you kind of knew what he was doing right there, especially after he threw behind Correa after a 3-0 pitch. And then I like the little trash talking that he did afterwards. Of course, both teams came out, but realized, because of the pandemic, it's best not to fight. Excuse me. It's best not to fight. So let's just go sit down and not be stupid like the Marlins. And let everything just die down.
Yeah, I'm also Team Joe Kelly on this. We weren't sure, obviously, with this unique season, if anything would happen with the Houston Astros, just as far as the way they might be dealt with, as compared to the rest of the teams, how they would deal with the Houston Astros. It's not surprising whatsoever. Pretty much the Dodgers were the team that were affected the most by this. So I'm still Team Joe Kelly. We all know what his intent was. That's why he got suspended the amount of games he got. It is about, I want to say, 20 games equivalent in a full season, something like that. So, he'll probably have a game or two knocked off, but I'm not surprised by what he did. We're at least us that still watch in with intent in baseball. We were sort of wondering if anybody would sort of do anything with the Houston Astros, and we see it didn't take long.
Yeah. Oh yes. And listen, this is a guy that broke his window when they were training during the social distancing, the not the pandemic, but sort of like, as everything is starting to kind of get together with, this is a guy that broke his window in his house. So, I mean, this is not really surprising. So I'm sure he'll probably end up serving like maybe 4 or 5 games. He'll get a couple of games knocked off. And, this will probably not be the last time we'll hear of this. I know it's not, but I don't think this is the last time we'll be hearing of this. Just saying. So let's go to the South side in the AL. Your White Sox did 5 in a row. 4 in a row, I should say, and the dynamic duo of Luis Robert and Eloy Jimenez have done such great. I think they just hit another home run. Actually, Dylan Cease isn't giving up dongs, so he actually had a good outing yesterday against the Royals. But let's face it, it's the Royals, so it probably would have been disappointing if they didn't sweep them. But what about your White Sox, Sid?
As you mentioned on Sunday afternoon, Dylan Cease had a very good performance. Besides that solo shot he gave up to Alex Gordon, he didn't have a lot of strikeouts, but that's okay as long as you get outs. The defense is playing great behind you. That's all you need. Dallas Keuchel has been a surprise to some, not to me personally, because we all knew what Keuchel has brought to the ball club so far. He's not a strikeout guy either, but he gets a lot of ground balls, and so which means it puts a lot more pressure on your defense, especially your infielders. So Keuchel has done well so far. I was worried about that starting pitching a little bit coming into the season. It looks like that's starting to turn around now. Lucas Giolito finally got back on track last week with a no decision, but he had a great performance at Cleveland. So hopefully he can stay consistent on that path throughout the season. But as we talked about before, guys, the offense is what is going to carry this team. You saw that in the last game of the Cleveland series, which they won, and you saw it over the weekend at Kansas City. And congratulations to rookie second baseman Nick Madrigal, going 4 for 5 yesterday. He could have went 5 for 5. He almost beat out his last at bat, but it wasn't meant to be. But he had a great day yesterday. Yasmani Grandal, the new catcher they picked up for the Milwaukee Brewers via free agency, he came through with 3 RBI yesterday. So, and Jose Abreu, he's starting to heat up too. So, this White Sox offense is on fire right now. Hopefully, they're catching Milwaukee at the right time right now. I think it's a 4-game series this week. 2 in Milwaukee starting tonight, and then I believe 2 here in Chicago later on this week. If I have that, I don't have the schedule in front of me, but they catch Milwaukee at the right time. No Lorenzo Cain. I don't think Ryan Braun's going to play either. I know they still have Christian Yelich, but
he's been struggling.
Take at least.
Yeah, I was saying Yelich has been struggling.
Yeah, so if you can take at least 3 out of 4 of these games against Milwaukee this week, you're in second place behind the Twins. Things should be looking up for the White Sox right now. I'm still concerned, even though they haven't done a bad job, I'm still concerned about their bullpen a little bit, even though they have done the job here recently. I'm still concerned about their bullpen. Of course, Eloy Jimenez, defense in left field, he made another blunder yesterday, which cost them the second run of the ball game for Kansas City. But outside of that, you have to feel good if you're a White Sox fan.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. They've got good young talent. We've been talking about it for the past couple of years now. They're starting to mature. Nick Madrigal, I mean, I think he's an all-star in the making. I really, really do. And of course, Eloy Jimenez, you know how I feel about him. I mean, he's a superstar in the making. There's no doubt about it. So the offense is definitely what's going to carry them. But now that the starting pitching is starting to come around, the White Sox are a dangerous team. They've got to just keep pace with the Minnesota Twins at this point, who have also gotten off to a great start and are still hitting home runs out of ballparks as well.
Yeah, I mean, they just hit a couple more. I mean, they took 3 out of 4 against the Indians. Look, I think the White Sox, like I've been saying for the last few weeks, the White Sox, their offense will keep them in games and they'll keep them in play in a lot of games. That bullpen, like you said, so I know they did well against Kansas City, but I'm a little concerned about how they're going to do it against the better teams in the Central divisions. That's what I'm worried about. But look, I think the White Sox, if the White Sox can keep staying consistent with their hitting, I think they can be right there. I don't think they'll be able to catch Minnesota because Minnesota, as long as they're hitting home runs, I mean they're going to be tough to catch. So as long as they get into that second or third place, which I think they will, they'll be okay.
Yeah, 2 quick notes on the White Sox. Gio Gonzalez looked good in his first start in Saturday's game against the Royals, and they're currently putting up these runs without Tim Anderson, who just went on the IL the other day.
Yeah. Well, luckily they got the depth, so hopefully that won't be a big problem not having Anderson.
This definitely was not the case a year ago. Definitely not.
Exactly. So they should be okay. In the AL, you talked about Baltimore, Jason. The Yankees. I think Aaron Judge has hit another home run. I think just hit another. I mean, leading the league in runs. I mean,
he's on fire. He's on fire.
Yeah, I mean, the run differential is just insane. Actually, they're actually right, trailing Minnesota. But Judge has been looking really good, and if they can stay healthy, I think the Yankees will be tough to beat in the AL.
Yeah, it is all about health for the Yankees. It really, really is. Aaron Judge is your MVP at this early point in the season. I mean, I think he just hit another one, Lakeena, like you just said. I mean, and it's so interesting because you hear it's an old baseball cliche about how the ball sounds different coming off certain players' bats. And obviously, when there's no fans in the stands, it's really easy to hear the ball and bat impact anyway. But if you just listen to some of the balls that are being hit by Aaron Judge, they legit sound different. and he is hitting the ball with such authority. I'm glad to see that he's healthy. I'm glad to see Giancarlo Stanton is healthy and mashing the ball. It's really all about health for the Yankees. Like you said, Lakeena, if they're healthy, they're going to be tough to beat.
And also for the Yankees, too, I did watch their game earlier this week at Baltimore. And Garrett Cole did look good. He was helped out by that offensive performance. I think they put up 9 runs in last Tuesday's win at Baltimore. So Garrett Cole does look good. It's just if you're a Yankees fan, you're concerned about the end of that starting rotation in their bullpen, which gave them problems last year.
Yeah, that was sort of the one thing that killed the Yankees in the end in the playoffs was their bullpen. So it'll be interesting, like you guys said. In the AL West, I mean, we all thought Houston was going to run away with it, but that hasn't been the case. And Oakland's looked really good so far. Seattle's, is right there. We've been talking about Seattle for the last couple of years. I mean, they've got sort of like the young nucleus. They just need to kind of like get it all together, get it all like mixed in together, and I think they'll be fine. And what do you guys think about the AL West? I mean, for me, I think it's going to be very interesting. We all thought that the Astros were going to run away with it. That hasn't been the case so far. What say you guys about the West?
For Oakland, this is what they do, correct? Every year they go to a sluggish start and they kind of tread water, and then after the All-Star break, they just seem to take off. But with this year, with the shortened schedule, you need to get off to a good start. Oakland's been looking good so far. I watched a couple of the games, especially over the weekend. They played at Seattle, and they looked really good. So I wouldn't be surprised if Oakland's right there at the end of the season. Maybe not to overtake Houston. I know they almost did last year, but they kind of fell by the wayside. Seattle, kind of the same thing, although they have a bunch of known names, but they compete hard every night. So I won't count them out just yet. Not for the division, but maybe for a wild card. But the AL West is going to be a surprise for most people. I think Oakland's going to stay and at least give Houston a real decent run at that title.
Well, yeah, for me, I mean, I think Oakland is a worthy challenger. I think we all picked Houston to win the division, but I think I might have had Oakland at a wild card spot. And I'm actually sort of leaning a bit more towards Oakland at this early part of the season. I know it's still, technically early. But Houston, I think, well, they've got a Justin Verlander problem to deal with in his forearm. They gotta really, really monitor that. They're missing Garrett Cole. So, at this point, that's your 1-2 at the top of your rotation. So
and Justin Verlander, too.
Yeah. And so they've got some issues there. Are they still good? Obviously, yeah, sure. But I think, again, Oakland is a worthy challenger there, and we'll keep an eye on it because, again, this is such a unique season. You don't really want to have a bad week or two. That can really impact your season in a negative manner. So got to keep our eye on that. I really feel bad for the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim or whatever you want to call them, and Joe Madden and their fans.
Yeah.
They've got a really, really bad team, and they have no pitching whatsoever. Shout out to Justin Upton, though. I believe hit his 300th home run the other day. But they're getting old, and they have no pitching, and it's not a good combination. And of course, Mike Trout just going on paternity leave now, so that's another big hole in their lineup. But I just really feel bad for, like I said, Mike Trout and their whole fan base because it's going to be they're not good. They're not good whatsoever. Let's see, a bit of a concern about Cleveland, right, guys? I mean, I thought it kind of started off well, but have lost a few games in a row now. They're not hitting the ball, and that's really where the glaring concern is. They're pitching well, but their offense isn't coming through. So I'm sort of keeping my eye on Cleveland. I think we all thought that they would sort of be right there to compete with the White Sox at the top of the division with the Minnesota Twins. So so far, not the case.
Just one piece of breaking news that's crossing the wire just now. Nomar Mazara, who the White Sox just picked up in the offseason from the Texas Rangers, he's just been activated from the injured list. Okay. So he will rejoin the team soon.
Okay, that's good to hear. I think for me, probably the most disappointing team I would say is right now, I would say maybe Toronto. I would thought maybe Toronto. I know that they're in a unique situation too where they're playing in Buffalo. They're not, they basically got kicked out of their own city. Now they now they have to play in Buffalo, and sort of the inconsistencies. I mean, they lost a couple in a row. Their hitting's been good, but their pitching hasn't been great. And then one day it's the reverse, so the consistency's just not there yet. But and also they've had games postponed too. We'll get to that in a minute with the Phillies. But like I said, it'll be very interesting though if they can kind of get back on track. Although they're so young, so they may have to. It may be another couple of years.
Yeah, quickly, I think the most disappointing team in the AL would have to be Cleveland, as we said before on the show a couple of shows ago. It depends on what Cleveland does, which gives the White Sox a better chance. Now you have expanded playoffs for this year. It'll better the chances for the White Sox to get into the playoffs. Cleveland, it's been the Minnesota Twins has been their Achilles heel over the last couple of years, and this year is shown its ugly head again. And like you mentioned, Lakeena, this is kind of their last run for Cleveland because they cannot pay everybody. Clevenger might be shown the door. Francisco Lindor might be shown the door. Remember, he was rumored to go to perhaps the Dodgers during the offseason. So big changes could be ahead for Cleveland. But before then, let's see if they can get together because they looked great in that series against the White Sox. But against the Twins on the road, they just did not look good.
I have a feeling, just a real quick note on that, on Francisco Lindor. Obviously, my feelings are really not worth a whole lot, guys and gals. But I really, really see him in pinstripes or in Boston red after this year. I just got a feeling.
Mm. Yeah, we'll see. It will be interesting though.
I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, exactly. Let's talk a little bit about off the field baseball
Yep.
stuff. The Marlins, the Miami Marlins, they've had 13 players and staff members that have tested positive for COVID in the last weekend. They've had games postponed, and then the Phillies, but the good news for the Phillies that they had no positive tests, which is good. But then now the Cardinals, now they've got a couple of players and personnel that have tested positive. So what do you guys think of all this? I mean, obviously they're not. I don't think they're going to cancel the rest of the season. I know all these doom and gloom people are like, well, they should just cancel the rest of the season. They're not going to do that. They're not. But and also Lorenzo Kane, who you just mentioned, said a few minutes ago that he's opting out. Luis Cespedes, I mean, they didn't know where the Mets didn't know where he was for like almost like half the day, and now his agent came out and said that, oh well, he's opting out. He packed all his stuff and just left, didn't tell anyone. What do you guys think of all this weirdness that's been going on off the field?
First, starting with Yoenis Cespedes, I know he had a couple of home runs to start off the year, but he's really been struggling. Outside of 2015, he just has not been consistent. Injuries has played a big part in this, but you could develop a reputation real quick that you, quote unquote, don't care. And I don't know that the Mets gave him a whole lot of money, but he's a free agent after this year. So he says he's not coming back due to COVID-19. If you're the Mets, okay, we got what we didn't get very much out of you outside of 2015. Good riddance. We don't have to see you again. Just go home. We're rebuilding anyway.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, this guy, I don't even know what to even say about him anymore. He's a nutcase. At this point, I mean, this isn't the first time that he's like done stuff and just not told his team about it. So I mean, I'm sure I feel the same way like you do, Sid. I'm sure the Mets are saying good riddance, goodbye and good riddance. So yeah, that's how it is for me. Yeah, it's just a weird situation. But I don't hate to be a homer here, but shout out to the Chicago Cubs and the Chicago White Sox, because if you look closely at some of sort of the inside information that is coming out from Major League Baseball, these are two of the better teams that are performing as far as organization-wise, keeping their staffs and ballpark clean and adhering to the protocols when it comes to this pandemic. We're also seeing teams that are not adhering to these rules, which is a really, really concerning for me, because you still see guys high-fiving and doing all types of things and stuff that isn't, it's just not smart. And then you have a breakout with the Miami Marlins. I don't know what happened there, but obviously things went terribly wrong. And now you've got a few players and staffers from the St. Louis Cardinals that have tested positive as well. And these are going to affect games. And there are going to have to be a lot of doubleheaders played, it seems like, within the near future here. But it's a concern. I just urge everybody to be smart. And not every team, not every player is being smart out there.
I guess the Marlins took a trip to Lou Williams and with Magic City and everything, and it's just like
For the
really
wings. For the wings.
those wings. Even though there was a dancer that said that yeah, Lou got a little bit of a left.
I don't believe that.
But we'll leave that alone. But look, I mean, hope that this isn't hopefully they contain this, and Rob Manfred deserves some blame here too, because he should have put in some of those protocols for all of the MLB, saying, okay, look, don't go here, don't socially distance, wash your hands and such. So he's telling the players union, like, look, you guys need to do your thing. Well, you're the commissioner, dude. You could have said something and said and like put all these parameters here. So you're the commissioner. This is why Adam Silver's been able to do what he does. And also, I keep forgetting, Rick Garber, I think is the name of the MLS commissioner for soccer. Yep. So come on, you deserve a little bit of blame here, Rob. Sorry.
Yeah, and also Commissioner Manfred backtracked and said yesterday, "Oh, I'm not about quitting." What he said, threatening Tony Clark and the Players Association, it's just like your stern parents giving you a warning before they actually do something. So that's how I took it, and so they're not going to cancel the season unless there's a or heaven forbid things really take turn worse for worse, where it affects half the teams and half the league. So I think, as I felt all along, they're going to try to push through the things. Just how do you handle this? And right now, baseball needs to learn how to handle this. And individual teams have to take personal responsibility as well.
Yeah, agreed.
All right. So, anything else you guys want to talk about before we take a break?
Let's take this time out.
All right. So, all right, we're gonna reconvene. We still got a lot more to talk about. We'll talk about the NFL. We'll talk about college football and some top players maybe revolting, and one top player raising the alarms of what schools might be doing or not doing when it comes to COVID. Also in college hoops, could the Big Ten got a lot of teams to beat next year?
Oh yeah, got some news in the Big Ten too.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So,
and let's do that hockey.
Of course, we're gonna get to the hockey part. Of course. The Hawks look great in their first game. Also, the stuff that the NHL is doing. So we gotta talk about that too, guys. So we're gonna take a quick break, and we'll be talking even more. So stay right there. Second C Sports Zoom style. We'll be right after this.
Zoom style.
All right, we'll be back right after this. All right, folks, and we're back for more Second City Sports Zoom style.
Zoom style.
We're getting better and better with that. All right. Welcome back. I'm Lakeena McGee. You can follow me at Keena McGee on Twitter and at Keena_McGee on the Instagram.
You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at SidKid80. Once again, at SidKid80, SIDKID80. That's SIDKID80.
And once again, you can follow me at Truth and Reason _, and you can follow the show's Twitter at 2NDCHCSI.
All right. Well, it's been a while. That's okay. All right, Sid. Let's get ready to, as Chance would say, even I'm having some issues with him, but that's neither here nor there. Let's do that hockey, as he would say.
Let's do that hockey.
All right. So the NHL officially had its restart on Saturday, where the Blackhawks had looked really good against the 5th seed Edmonton Oilers. They came out the gate, there was a lot of goal scoring. So if you took the under, I mean, I think you did pretty well for yourself early Saturday evening. But look, I mean, the offense looked really good. I mean, it was got a little too close late, but they were able to pull it off. They'll lead 1-0 in his best of 5, sort of, pre-Stanley Cup playoff, however they're saying it. So what impressed you most about the Blackhawks, Sid?
Their offense, as I wrote it in my article at WARR.com, I expected it to be an offensive series, but it's going to come down to goaltending. For the Blackhawks, it will have to come down to Corey Crawford. He did look good through the first 2.5 periods, but as you mentioned, Lakeena, the penalty kill for the Hawks didn't look so good down the stretch, but that's what happens when you take a foot up off the gas. You were leading 6-2 at the time. But back to the beginning of the game, they gave up the first goal after going into the penalty box, talking about the Hawks. After that, they settled down. They got their game together. They took advantage of the mistakes that the Oilers made, in particular goalie Mike Smith of the Oilers. Dylan Strong, great recognition, great play, bouncing the puck after Smith turned it over off the back of the net. That's where really got the Hawks going. Jonathan Taves, Captain Serious, he takes over again. And shout out to should be Rookie of the Year, Dominic Kubalik, in his first ever playoff game, recording 5 points, including 2 big goals and 3 assists. So he really stood out to me. Brandon Saad, I said he's supposed to be one of those guys that's supposed to stand in front of the net. He's been here before. He chipped in with the goal on Saturday. So offensively, a great performance by the Hawks. Let's see if they can continue that tonight in Game 2. But I have a feeling that things will probably be different. So we'll see what happens in tonight's game. But all around was a good performance offensively for the Hawks. The team defense looked good in spots, but then the end of the third period concerns me. So we'll see what tone they'll set for tonight's game 2 action.
Well, I mean, I definitely was impressed by the start of the Blackhawks. But Sid, obviously, I'm the resident knowledge here when it comes to hockey. So just break it down for me how this sort of restart format is, because is this technically a playoff series for the Blackhawks and the Oilers?
It's the qualifying round. It's the qualifying round. It's the best 3 out of 5 series. So the first team to 3 wins gets to play in the first round. The top 4 teams in the East and the top 4 teams in the West, which they'll call Robin rounds, they'll play for seedings. Those seeded number 5 and lower, they're participating in a qualifying round, which is the best 3 out of 5. Those round robins for sports teams determining seeding, those are best 3 out of 5 series as well.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, simplifying it for those who are not, aware of how this format is in hockey. Carolina's looking really good. They're up 3-1 against the Rangers. I mean, Henrik Lundqvist, who I love dearly, but he's not getting any help. So I'm a little worried about that series. What team has impressed you so far, Sid?
The Carolina Hurricanes, as you mentioned, as we are currently recording this podcast, as you mentioned, the Carolinas up 3-1 over the New York Rangers in game 2. Frustration for the Rangers at the end of that second period there. The rest did a little bit of shoving, but they had to kind of break it up quickly because, social distancing. They're playing in the ball. Now, they did allow them to have one fight in game 1 on Saturday afternoon, but outside of that, things were being pretty okay. So, offensively for the New York Rangers, it has been there throughout this season, this season and throughout the series. Congrats to former Blackhawk Timmy Pernier, who did score the only goal to this point in game 2 today for the Rangers. So we'll see if the Rangers get it back together. If they can, they'll trail the series 2-0, and things will not look good for that team, even though they have been fighting hard all year.
Yeah, that's always been sort of an issue scoring-wise for them. I like Colorado. Colorado looked really good last night.
That was a great finish last night.
That really was. Literally right at the buzzer, that goal, that game-winning goal. Philly looked really good. Columbus, the Blue Jackets look really good against Toronto. Minnesota, against the Canucks with a shutout. I mean, Matt Dumda, who plays – yeah, right, exactly. We'll leave that alone. Matt Dumda, who plays for the Wild, who's a defenseman, has been leading the charge against erasing racism in hockey. And he stood with the Oilers and the Blackhawks for the end racism, Black Lives Matter, and he kneeled. He became the first, NHL player to kneel. The hockey diversity alliance is what they called, and they're vowing to kind of stand up for racism. And this has been a problem for hockey all these years, guys, that you look at what happened with Grant Fuhr, because he played with one of the top dynasty teams of the 80s. He dealt with racism. I mean, they look at Jerome McGinley, who he'll tell you, who now is down in the Hall of Fame, but he'll be the first to tell you that he's dealt with racism. So, and look at the today's stars, PK Subban, Wayne Simmons, Dumda. I mean, we actually had some instances here when it came, with a few Hawks fans earlier this season. So, what do you think? How do you guys like what hockey's doing? What more they need to do?
They need to include more of the I hate to use this word, but more kids of different ethnicities into their programs. Really dive deep into these communities. I know they have a program called Hockey's for Everyone. I'm not gonna say it's been a total miss, but they need to be more active. Can you make the game of hockey more affordable for children? Because it's not easy playing hockey. No, I never done it at any level, only on video games. But with that being said, it costs a lot to play hockey. And I think that's not the main reason why that children of other ethnicities do not participate in hockey. It's not like they don't want to, but because of the economics, many of them can't. You have to pay for ice time. You had to pay for the equipment, and so you play on these teams. The cost goes up. So uh, uh, people always say to parents, and parents always say to the kids, "Do you really want to do this?" Because it's really a big time investment. Actually, a lifetime investment if your kid wants to play college hockey or perhaps go to the NHL.
Yeah, I mean, I like what they're doing so far as well. But obviously, it's a sport that is obviously not the most diverse that we have. So there needs to be more done. Like you said, Sydney, I think one of the main reasons is the economic part of it. So hopefully, if that gets turned around, we'll start to see a little more color within the National Hockey League.
And also
And
more.
also, no, go ahead, Lakeena.
No, so I was gonna say more sort of promotion with those players of color. I mean, you look at Jerome McGinley. I mean, a lot of people you can't even pick him out of a lineup. I mean, nobody knows who he is. He's been one of the,
Mhm.
in recent years, been one of the most consistent players. Also, Supon as well. I mean, we know who he is, but it seems like mainstream wise, nobody really knows. So again, promoting I think is really sort of the thing here that needs to be done more of.
I know why. I know most of the people in Chicago and across the country were watching the NBC broadcast of the Blackhawks and Oilers. I had the privilege to watch the Canadian broadcast of that Hawks Oilers game. Ron McLean, who if many of you may know, some don't, he's the host of Hockey Night in Canada. It was on the Rogers Sportsnet. During the second intermission of the Hawks Oilers game, he had the chance to interview Evander Kane and not Jerome McGill wasn't on there, and Matt Dumba and a couple other black stars of the National Hockey League, and they were all saying the same thing that we were saying, that they're gonna do their part to help step up the participation of blacks in hockey, not just in Canada but here in the United States as well. And like you said, Lakeena, promotion is the key, and I've been saying this for a long time. This falls on the commissioner's doorstep of Gary Bettman. Promotion has been what's been their Achilles heel in the National Hockey League. It should not be fourth in this country, in the United States, as far as popularity, but they have no one to blame but themselves. They're just like baseball.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, yeah, look, Mike Trout. I mean, for baseball, I mean, what can people tell how he looks or what he looks like? No. Outside of us? No. So we'll see. People are going to be on them, so we'll see what happens there. Okay, let's go to the gridiron, guys. The NFL. Now we've seen some top players that have opted out. We've seen some guys that have been on the COVID reserve list, meaning that guys did not necessarily test positive, but I guess as a precaution. Matt Stafford, yesterday probably the biggest one of not the biggest names so far to be put on that list. So of course, his wife is recovering from brain surgery, so you got to think you got to be extra. And also they just had a son, so they got to be extra careful. So what do you guys think? Do you guys expect to see even more players opt out? I mean, Damian Williams was probably before, is the one big name so far that has come out and saying he's opted out. There have been a few players, of course, Eddie Goldman here for the Bears. So do you guys see any other names?
Well, Dante Hightower for the Patriots. Okay, listen, Patrick Chung and their defensive backfield. Those are really big, huge names and important names for that defense of the New England Patriots. Dante Hightower is the signal caller. Okay, that is a really, really big deal. I believe Marquise Goodwin for the Philadelphia Eagles was looking to be more involved in that passing attack. This year, he's opting out. Like you mentioned, Lakeena, Eddie Goldman, Damian Williams scored 2 touchdowns in the Super Bowl for crying out loud. He's opting out. We got to still see, what's really happening with the Detroit Lions. We don't really know sort of the protocols and what's going on there. It's a COVID-19 reserve list, which means they have either tested positive or come in contact with somebody that has tested positive. But other than that, we don't really know what happens next. So I've been saying this for a couple of weeks now. There's still a lot of answers, still a lot of questions to be answered as far as how the NFL is dealing with this thing, because there's probably, not at this point, going to be a quote unquote bubble for these guys to play in. I don't think it would be possible anyway. but it's such a fluid situation because I mean, as far as the case of the Detroit Lions, it seems to be a lot of their team. So how will that affect scheduling? How will that affect games? Moving forward, what happens if there is an outbreak? With because I believe it's not an if thing; it's a when thing, right? And what happens then? Do you cancel games? Do you try to play shortened games? I mean, what happens there? There's still a lot of questions to be answered that we just don't know about the NFL, and it's still concerning to me.
I hope the list doesn't grow expeditiously, but I wouldn't be surprised if it did. And now the news came out yesterday that Philadelphia Eagles head coach Doug Peterson has tested positive for COVID-19. He's okay, doing okay now. He's self quarantining himself. He's still gonna trying to run the team via Zoom from his home while the assistant coaches will run practice at the facility. So if it's starting to get to these coaches, then it's really going to be a problem.
Yeah, he's actually asymptomatic
Yeah.
at this point, so you know that's good news there. Deuce Staley is actually taking over duties for him right now. He'll still be involved, but Deuce Staley is like sort of like in the face-to-face operations. I mean, I'm hoping that the list doesn't grow, but that's why you're probably going to be seeing more and more guys perhaps maybe pull out. I think the deadline is Wednesday as it's recording. We're recording on a Monday. Wednesday, I think, is probably the deadline. And Devin McCourty, of course, from the aforementioned Patriots, he is sort of saying, well, wait a minute, why are you only giving us this much? But I think like I said, like we told Matt Peck said, I think there's other things going on there, but I'm not trying to be messy there, but
Right.
but I'm not I don't have proof of that, so take that for what it's worth, folks. But I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if we get more and more folks coming out and guys coming out. Like look, we saw why Marquise Goodwin once is opting out. I mean, him and his wife struggled to have kids. They just had a baby girl a few months ago. Deuce Staley became a dad for the first time. He and his lady, a longtime lady, welcomed the son. So there's going to be a lot. I wouldn't be surprised if we see more. Again, the deadline's Wednesday, so it'll be interesting to see what happens there. Will there be more Bears? Will there be more Lions? Like you seid, Jason, there seems to be going on there with the Detroit Lions. But yeah, it's going to be very interesting.
I think it's going to be a bigger story if some of these big time names, the names bigger than the names we just mentioned. If you see like a Russell Wilson or Jimmy Garoppolo or Tom Brady, if those guys are on the opt-out list, I think then it will become a bigger story.
Yeah, I agree with that, and it still remains to be seen. I guess there's only a couple of days left, but we still got time for some more players to opt out. We'll see what happens.
Well, OBJ sources close to him are saying that he's opting out, although there was initial report that he was because of the fear. So we'll see how far that goes. But right, anything else NFL wise you guys want to talk about?
Joey Bosa got paid.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, what do you guys think about that?
Deserved? Maybe. Not too sure, but I think that's where the market is right now. So I can't be too mad at the contract. But, I mean, he got paid nonetheless. So congratulations to him. That's for sure.
Yeah, he deserves his money because we all know in the NFL, your contract is not fully guaranteed, only 30% of it. So Bosa is now, I think he's the highest paid defensive lineman in the league. He beats out Aaron Donald of the Rams and, of course, Khalil Mack here in Chicago for the Bears. So he won't be up there for long. So if somebody else on the defensive line, whoever that player is going to have a great season and perhaps break the bank again. So we all know that the salary cap is going up, probably perhaps not after this year because of the pandemic that we are in right now, but in a couple of years when it really goes back up, the price tag for these defensive stars along with the quarterbacks are going up. So these teams are going to have to monitor the cap very carefully. We already see that with the quarterbacks, right, obviously, but with these defensive players starting to get paid too, it's really going to be trouble.
I.e. Pat Mahomes. So yeah, so there's gonna be a lot of guys gonna be want that money. So and listen, Bosa totally deserves it. So I mean, maybe not that much money, but that they maybe I can understand why they did it, because I think they want to make sure to have him in the fold to sort of build that defense. So will be interesting. Also, the Vikings, speaking of the NFC North rivals, the Vikings have signed extensions to both general manager Rick Spielman and head coach Mike Zimmer. There was rumors last year that Mike Zimmer would get the boot, but they made the playoffs, got to the divisional round, and they we'll see what they do, but yeah, I think it's deserving for both men. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I mean, I think Mike Zimmer's one hell of a coach. He's sort of, I don't want to say resurrected the Minnesota Vikings, but I mean, he's definitely gotten them back to playing well, year in and year out and being a playoff contender. And they've got another good team this year coming into it. So, we'll see what happens on the field. But yeah, Rick Spielman, I think he's a hell of a general manager. I mean, the two have seemingly worked well together. I don't really know too much about what's going on behind the scenes, but I mean, congratulations to both men. I think they're both deserving of it.
Yeah, agree. Congrats to both men. We'll see if they can finally take that next step and win the Super Bowl. I know they fell short of winning the division last year, but as you mentioned, they got their playoff victory at New Orleans before.
Yeah, before losing San Francisco. So yeah, so it's going to be very interesting though if the Vikings can kind of like take that next step. I know they had to trade Diggs. They had some other stuff going on too. They had a lot of their defensive guys, the older defensive guys, they had to let go. So it'll be interesting though. So finish your thoughts, Sid.
I think Dalvin Cook, their running back, was looking for a new contract as well. I think he's back with the team, but he was looking to get fresh cash as well. So we'll have to monitor that situation.
Yeah, Dalvin Cook did report the other day, but yeah, it was a bit of a concern. I can't remember what date it was, but have all three of us broken down the Jamal Adams trade? You may have done it Friday, but
you do it. Okay, well, you go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, well, I definitely, obviously want to get you guys' thoughts, but I kind of think this is a good trade for both teams. It was sort of obvious at this point that Adams didn't want to be in New York anymore. I mean, obviously he's calling out their general manager and team owners and head coaches. I mean, we all know about Adam Gase anyway, but we won't go to that specific part of it. But in a division where literally 1 yard cost you the division last year, this may have been the tipping point to push Seattle ahead of the San Francisco 49ers. I personally thought they would win the division anyway coming into this year, but I know there's a bit of a debate about if the trade sort of nudges them ahead of the Niners or not. I was sort of the mind that the Niners would have a bit of a Super Bowl hangover, which would allow a team like the LA Rams, or as we talked about, the Arizona Cardinals, to steal a couple of games and also be competitive. But I think the NFC West is going to be really, really tough. But I mean, I love this trade for both teams because they got the Jets. I mean, in this case, they got a very, very good haul for Jamal Adams and a very good safety in Bradley McDougald in itself. And of course, Seattle is sort of trying to reboot the Legion of Boom, maybe a 2.0 sort of version of that, and that certainly helps. And Jamal Adams is a playmaker.
Yeah, for the Seahawks, it definitely bolsters up their secondary, which was a problem for them last year. I have them, me personally, as a favorite for the NFC West. I know people want to talk about San Francisco, but I have my concerns about them. Maybe they'll take a step back. I'll give my predictions for the divisions at the end of the month here. But with that being said, it puts Seattle as the top two, maybe top three team in the NFC to reach the Super Bowl. And you had the quarterback on the other side for Russell Wilson. So they're pretty much set there. Now, on the other side for the Jets, as I always said, they have a good offensive line. They need a running back, and they need a number one wide receiver. And the question is, going into the season for the Jets, will Sam Darnold, one, stay healthy? Number two, is he that franchise quarterback?
Yeah, look, they got to look. Like I said, like we said, I think a couple weeks ago when it happened, said that the Jets got a nice little haul. Bradley McDougald's probably one of the best young secondary guys, so they can build around him. And they got a lot of draft picks over the next couple of years. So I'm not worried about the Jets right now. Now, as for the Seahawks, I mean, look, that NFC West, and I've been saying this for the last 2 weeks. That NFC West is probably, I don't want to say wide open, but it's going to be very competitive. Like I said, each team has their sort of shortcomings. The running, who's going to run the ball for the Seahawks, and is San Fran going to have that Super Bowl hangover? Will the Rams? I know they had to get rid of a lot of guys because of cap space, but we'll see if they're any good. We'll see how good Arizona is. There's a lot of buzz about Arizona, so I think. Look, I think Seattle's right there. I think with San Fran. I don't want to say that. I've heard people say, well, this will put them over the top, not only in the division, but could also get in the Super Bowl. I want to slow down because especially since the fact that, how this offseason is played out, the fact that they haven't been able to practice these guys. So, I know we're going to do camp and whatnot, it's going to start camp, but it's going to be very interesting, though. That NFC West is going to be very competitive.
Yeah, speaking of the NFC West, just real quick, I haven't seen any promos for it. I think NFL Films is still going to go on with it along with HBO, but Hard Knocks is supposed to feature the Los Angeles Rams and the Los Angeles Chargers this year because they're both are playing in a new stadium called SoFi Stadium with no preseason now. It'll be interesting to see how much will these teams allow to be placed on air because most of it will be. I'm sure they'll have to be creative on which players they're going to profile. I know they're going to profile the guy who was undrafted or perhaps the guy who was cut from another team. But I think mostly what you're going to see, I'm curious to find out what you're going to see, how they social distance and are there any meeting rooms or which there probably won't be, but how they're Zoom meeting these plays to the players and what can they and will not do on the practice field. I think it's really going to be interesting. Will they have the highest ratings ever? I'm not sure, but I want to see how NFL Films will be creative since there'll be no preseason games to follow this year.
Yeah, I mean, having a lot of those guys there, they're not going to be in a bubble, so that's going to be very interesting to see how they film this because I'm sure they're going to have to probably do like boom mics and both at the top and at the bottom to kind of like keep their distance from everybody. That's going to be very interesting though to see how they do this because you're doing both teams, so you're dealing with a lot of tight quarters anyway. So that's going to be interesting to see how they film and B how these camps are going to look.
Yeah, that's a great point.
All right. Anything else NFL wise before we go to the college ranks?
No, not here.
Let's do the college pigskin.
College pigskin. So for people who this came out over the weekend. So for those who don't know, the Pac-12, some prominent Pac-12 players have kind of, I don't want to say form a union, but they've decided to sort of like use their power, and they wrote a really great Players Tribune piece. Jake Kernan of the California of the Cal Bears, he was one of the ones that sort of kind of started spearheading this, and he's a redshirt senior from Cal, and he's the one that kind of helped organize all of this. Among some of the sort of the demands, more social justice reform, within the college ranks, Black Lives Matter, and also pay. I've seen some articles with guys say, well, it's unrealistic, this is absurd, or others say, well, take it or leave it or whatever, y'all can go if y'all don't want to play. And now Nick, I want to make sure I get his name right, the head coach of Wazoo, this will be his first year there. Nick Rolovic told his star player, Cassidy Woods, a wide receiver who's projected to be a first-round pick this season, and he told him that unity, if you will, among you guys will be an issue, among other things. So what do you guys think? This whole thing is becoming very sort of haywire here. So what do you guys say what's been going on in the Pac-12 and everything else?
I'm all for the players using their power, especially I want to put a better term. I don't want to say this weird phenomenon, but lack of a better term. After the assassination of George Floyd, people have been more active in coming together and unifying. And I think these college football players are using that momentum to a positive advantage. So I do not blame these college kids right here. Of course, they cannot legally unionize, but they can. I heard. I think it was Jay Williams this morning on the Get Up on ESPN. He brought up a great point. They they're allowed to sign waivers to play, but they cannot legally unionize. So they're really put in a no-in position, which I'm paraphrasing a little bit here. So anything they can to get their voices heard and get their demands hopefully met, I'm all for it. I'm all for it. Somebody has to listen to them because, as I always say in college sports, everybody gets paid but the players. The players are quote unquote essential workers.
I couldn't agree with you more, Sydney. You know, we need to see more of this. Maybe, hopefully, we can see this in another Power Five conference or two or three or all of them, because, like you just said, they're the ones at most risk, and they don't get paid, and they're the ones out there, you know, putting their bodies on the line. And I am so happy to see something like this going on. I don't know the resolution. I'm definitely keeping my eye on it, though. I hope these kids get the answers they want, because again, I keep going back to this. There is so much that is not known for these players and how they're supposed to operate, and they're being left, you know, to the winds, for lack of a better phrase. There is no real direct leadership from the NCAA or even in this case, even the head of the Pac-12. It's really disappointing to see the reaction instead of the proaction from a lot of these men in power in these organizations, especially in the NCAA. So I'm all for it, like you said, Sydney. I'm excited to see how it plays out.
Yeah, and look, this is going to be very interesting to kind of like where all this goes, because the season's supposed to be starting in just about a month for some of these programs. I mean, I see the Sun Belt, they're going to go on as scheduled. Okay. They're going to do like a 10, 12 game schedule. I know some other conferences have said they're not going to play, you know, till spring, you know, not just football, with any of their sports. So either fall sports. So it'll be interesting to see there, but it's not surprising the NCAA's lack of action here, or lack of like sort of
Lack of leadership.
in, you know, in unity, especially because there seems to not be like, okay, I know you're miffed because y'all lost a lot of money, but if you know these teams don't play, you're going to lose a lot of other sports, especially with Stanford. They had to get rid of about a dozen of their sports, so it's going to be happening more and more. So Mark Emmer, where are you? The rest of you NCAA leadership, where are you? You know, what's going on here? So it's just crazy. You know, we'll be interested to see how this goes, because I just think that I don't know. I mean, maybe Kirk Herbstreit wasn't crazy when he said that he would be surprised if there's football this year.
Yeah, you have to be worried about this more than the coronavirus.
Yep.
So you shouldn't be worried about that, but this would be just as big as the virus, which everyone is obviously worried about right now, and rightfully so.
Yep, agreed.
Okay, Caleb Foley, who's the talented second, you know, corner. I think he's a corner or safety. I know he's in the secondary. From Caleb Farley, who's one of the top secondary guys. I think he was all ACC last year for Virginia Tech. He was, you know, the second player to opt out. I keep forgetting the running back's name from Illinois that did that. He was the first to do it, but he's the second. He's the most prominent name, Farley is, and he kind of raised concerns about what's been going on, and he said that was one of the reasons why he decided to opt out. So do you guys think there will be other players that are going to be joining him, and what do you think is going to happen here?
Yeah, I can see it. I mean, I can definitely see it. You know, we're actually seeing it with what's going on with the Pac-12 and their unity group. Again, I mean, I hate to keep saying this, but people, they especially these players, they don't have enough information to make them feel comfortable, and that's on the NCAA. You know, that is on Mark Emmer and the leadership that he's not showing at this point. You know, it's concerning. It really is, and it creates fear and it creates doubt. And you know, however you feel about it, I mean, these young men are you know, taking their lives into what they feel is their own hands by making this decision. So I would not be surprised if more young men start opting out. I wouldn't be at all.
I wouldn't be surprised either. Heaven forbid, and I do mean heaven forbid, the worst. This virus takes the turn for the worst, especially in the states that are currently hotspots like Florida and Texas and Arizona and parts of California. If you're a projected high first round draft pick like quarterback Trevor Lawrence of Clemson, and like I said, heaven forbid, this takes the turn for the worst. Why would you play this year? Really? The decision would have been made for you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, lack of leadership, and that's all you can really
Mm-hmm.
say. I mean, this is just unfortunate that we're still, even after all these months, after everything that's been happening, we're still talking about this and lack of leadership because of, you know, not, you know, sort of letting the conferences fend for themselves, which I think is just wrong, and I think it shows lack of organization and responsibility. Way to go, NCAA! You screwed up. You screwed up. Let's be honest
As
here.
usual.
Exactly. So let's go from the college football gridiron to the college round ball. Some top players have decided to take their names out of the draft. Luke Garza from Iowa, two Illinois guys, Kobe Hoffman and Ao. I'm not gonna. Yeah, I'll let Jason say because he says his last name better than than
Ayo Desumu.
Ao Desumu. Okay. See, oh, I actually had that right. Couple other players, the sophomore from Baylor, I forgot, Jared Butler, that's his name. He just decided to withdraw. Remy Martin from Arizona State has pulled his name out. So a lot of top players have decided to pull out of the draft. Now, are you guys surprised by this? And also, what does this mean for a lot of teams for next season coming up?
Well, I'll tell you why I'm a little surprised by this, but I'm not. Especially in the case of like a Luca Garza and a Kofi Coburn, I thought they would be drafted. But it seems as though in both of their cases that there was a good possibility that they would not have been drafted. So we'll see. It looks like Coburn would have been drafted as sort of as projections go, but he would have been a real late pick. Same thing for Garza, maybe not being drafted at all. So that's why I'm a little bit surprised, but I'm excited, especially in the case of Coburn and Ayu Desumu for the Illini. I think this gives them at the very least a top 15 preseason team, if not an outright top 10 team. They are incredibly talented. They bring back one of the best recruiting classes in the Big Ten as well. Brad Underwood has done an incredible job there. I'm so happy to sort of see this program at least start to get back on track. They had a bit of a surprising season last year, so now they're going to have expectations, right? Let's see how they handle them. But they've got one of the best inside outside the players in the entire conference. I wanted Coburn to come back for another year anyway. I think he needed it. He sort of floundered down the stretch there, even though he still played well, but he definitely didn't play as well as he did in the first part of the season. So I'm excited for that. Yeah, I mean, I think the Big Ten is going to be one hell of a conference. I think it just makes college basketball better as a whole. So I'm excited for it.
I like this rule that the NBA implemented a couple of years ago. If you don't, as long as you don't hire an agent, if you don't like the projected spot that you are projected to be selected, then you can opt out and try again. Next year you can go back to college. So I think that was smart of the NBA to do. As you mentioned, Jason, it's gonna boost up college even more. You're still gonna have some of your top prospects go to college, even though probably that one and done rule should be and probably will be erased once the new NBA CBA will be done in a couple of years or so. Uh, it should help more college basketball. They need it right now, and it should help them not in the short term but in the long term as well. Short term because we missed March Madness this past year because of the pandemic we are in right now, but hopefully if things get sort of back to normal, college basketball with the players return will be a better off for it.
Aaron Henry from Michigan State also has decided to withdraw from the draft. Chris Smith from UCLA, he was one of the big reasons why UCLA went on that great run that they probably could have made the tournament had they had everything not stopped. So yeah, so a lot of top players have went this route, and like you guys said, I mean, college hoops is definitely a place where they need it because, like you said, they with no March Madness, this is sort of like some guys are kind of testing the waters, but they said, you know what, we probably need to come back and bounce out. So this should be fun. I mean, look, whatever helps college hoops. I mean, they need it right now. So this will be interesting season coming up. We'll see if anything weird happens that things have to either move or get delayed. That whole thing. So it'll be interesting. The Luka Garza thing, I thought he would have stayed, but Fan McCaffrey, I'm sure the Hawkeyes fans will be happy about that. Yeah, I think them, Illinois, and Michigan State will probably be the top 3 favorites in the Big Ten next year. We'll see, but it should be a lot of fun. So, what more do you guys want to talk about?
I'll leave it up to Jason.
Well, actually, I was gonna say, what did you feel about kind of how this is sort of transpiring? What is your sort of feelings on like how you think there should be a season in college basketball? Because again, it's going to be really hard to sort of keep these guys in a bubble. Do you see any of that type of scenario for college basketball, or what do you think?
I know that Rick Pitino, now I think he's back to coaching college. He said that he wouldn't be surprised if all these conferences will go to conference scheduling only starting, and they should start in January if this virus takes a turn for the worse. I don't know if they're going to start in November. They usually start in mid to late November. I don't know. Hopefully there's a vaccine out there by then, or things are looking better by then. I know we'll be in the beginning of flu season, but with that being said, I won't be surprised if the start of college basketball got delayed by a month or two. We all hope that it doesn't happen, but I wouldn't be surprised.
You would think it'd be easier there to put the college hoops players on a bubble since you're not dealing with as big of a roster in some cases. But I mean, look, I wouldn't be surprised if what Rick Pitino said is true, that they actually decided to wait and just say, look, we'll just wait till January, especially if things don't seem to slow down by then. If, at least right now, it doesn't look like it. So within the next month, as we get into September, mid to late September, when these guys are starting to get ready to practice. I mean, it's hard to say at this point, but I would be surprised if these teams go all conference. I wouldn't be shocked.
Yeah, I'm sort of leaning that way as well. I think they're sort of going to follow suit with NCAA football. At least they're sort of outline of a plan at this point. Yeah, but it's just so interesting and unique and what's going on with sports, in the professional ranks as well, not only in college. So just wanted to get your guys' quick thoughts on what do you think may happen there. I think it's probably going to be somewhat of an all-conference type of deal as well.
Well, and plus they got a little bit more time too, so they can't like push it back to the springtime. They can't do that. So especially you got college hoops going on, and then with the FCS you got the college football going on as well. So the cheerleaders are going to be very busy. So yeah, so maybe that's a good thing. Who knows? The Rock, with another ownership group, they have put in $15 million to buy the XFL. What do you guys think about that?
Hopefully the XFL will save itself and save its image. Vince McMahon couldn't do it. I know their ratings were decent earlier this year, but it's all about rebranding, repackaging. Some people say spring football is maybe not the best football. Are you going to try to compete with the NFL, even though your league will follow the Super Bowl? But it's all about repackaging and rebranding. How are you going to sell this to the public? Again, this will be the third time that you're going to try. So hopefully the Rock has good advisors and good people behind him. We'll see how this works.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the third time could be the charm, right? I guess that's how we got to put it. Like you said, Sydney, the ratings were decent, but obviously, with an oncoming pandemic, things just sort of weren't able to be sustained with the XFL. I'm excited for The Rock. I'm excited for the group. I think he's going to bring, a fresh perspective to try to, like you say, rebrand and repackage this thing. But it's the third time, I just don't know at this point. Is it even worth it?
Especially since ESPN's already opted out of televising the XFL. So you got to think that that's another thing that's going to be taken into account too. That's probably why they had to, The Rock had to. I think The Rock's worth like 180 million or 190 million. So he can't afford, I guess, the investment, even if it's a being a bad one. But we'll see. I mean, it's going to be very interesting though. Like, can they sort of bounce back from this? Because unfortunately, the ratings were starting to dip even before everything stopped. So that's another thing that they got to worry about there. Couple of NFL notes. Juwan James, who's a talented right tackle for the Broncos, he decided to opt out, filling a huge void in that offensive line. He cited too much unknown about this virus and about plans about handling it going forward. What do you guys think about that news?
We were just talking about this a few minutes ago. It's with this sort of deadline being, sort of forcing these guys to make these decisions. I wouldn't be surprised if more prominent names opt out.
Yeah, like I said, this story will become bigger once the bigger names, if they appear on that list.
Oh, and some more breaking news. Adam Schefter just reported former Washington football team's Pro Bowler, it's weird saying, that's a mouthful, tight end Jordan Reed reached an agreement, instead of late an agreement with the 49ers. So what do you guys think about that news?
Well, probably, one of the last chances for Jordan Reed. I mean, he's a guy that was certainly talented. Him and Kirk Cousins had very, very good chemistry a few seasons back when he was healthy in Washington. But obviously, concussions and other injuries have sort of derailed his career a little bit. And, this might be one of the last chance hopes for him. They still got Kittle there at the tight end spot in San Francisco. So maybe he can be somewhat in a backup type of role.
Yeah, as you mentioned, Jason, he'll be the backup to George Kittle, and assuming that he stays healthy, and heaven forbid that George Kittle gets hurt, he'll be the number one guy. He's known to put up big numbers in the past, but injuries, i.e. concussions, has been his problem. I know people thought that he was going to retire, but he's going to give it one last shot. Best wishes to him.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, this is a guy that's had a lot of concussion problems and injury prone. So, like I said, this is a low risk. I mean, add stuff to that tight end position. They sort of like take the heat off Kittle for, maybe some third down play. So this should be interesting. The Bears, real quick about the Bears. Mr. Trubisky said that he wants to prove everybody wrong. What do you guys think? What? I believe it up to you guys.
I'll say this. It's going to be tough with no preseason games this year. And no, I do not hate Trubisky, so I'm not going to go down that route. But as I said before on this program, the job is his until he screws up. This is the last year of his contract. We all know that head coach Matt Nagy and GM Ryan Pace, their jobs are riding on the success and failure of Trubisky. If Trubisky fails early, they're going to go to Nick Foles. Unless something dramatic happens between now and September 13th when they open at Detroit, Mr. Trubisky will be your starting quarterback at Detroit.
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely echoing some of the same sentiments there, Sydney. But at this point, show us. Don't talk about it, be about it, is how we like to say sometimes. And, this is where it's at. It's a critical junction for, like not only Trubisky, but like you said, Sydney, Ryan Pace and Matt Nagy as well. They've got to get this thing right. And I think they're going to have a good football team. But, like you said, if Trubisky struggles early, I think they're going to have a quick hook.
Oh yeah. Look, especially since there's no preseason, that might be harder for Foles to kind of get back in there. But again, if Trubisky sucks early on, I mean, they may not have a choice but to give him the heat. But again, we'll see. I mean, this is sort of one of those things where you're sort of like, there has been no off season for a lot of these guys. So it's going to be very interesting how, for all these teams, not just for the Bears, for all these teams, especially with all these new acquisitions and new coaches, not being able to work with their guys up close and personal. So this whole season is going to be very interesting because I'm not worried about it. I mean, I know that Teddy Bridgewater, who's now with the Panthers, said that he was actually able to work out a few of his guys sort of like one at a time, keep the distance. So it's going to be very interesting though to see how all this goes because which team benefits and which teams don't and everything. So this is going to be very interesting.
Yeah, that goes for all the teams in all your four major sports. Whoever wins the title is really going to earn it this year.
Great.
All right, Justin Thomas wins the St. Jude Invitational yesterday. He goes back to being number one, holding off guys like Phil Mickelson and Brooks Koepka, both former number ones themselves. I think this is like this 13th, I guess, career PGA title. That's the third most after Jack Nicklaus and Tiger Woods. Look, this guy already has a couple of Grand Slams, or actually one Grand Slam in him. So this guy is showing that he is still one of the best, and he's still in his mid-20s. So this guy is still like one of the top golfers in the world.
Yeah, agreed. And sometimes his name, gets put behind the Rory McIlroys, the Brooks Koepkas, and guys of that nature sometimes. But yeah, he's still really good and been consistent throughout his career. Really, he just doesn't have a whole lot of majors to show for it.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, he has one, but you got the PGA Championship coming up in next week, so that's gonna be very interesting to see where that'll be. So that's gonna be fun and exciting, and we'll see where Tiger is. I mean, he took a couple weeks off, still having issues with the knee. I'm hearing. So, I mean, well, yeah, we'll talk about that that as that goes, but sorry about that, folks. So any final thoughts before we wrap up here, guys?
I'm really excited for Game 2 between the Hawks and Orioles tonight. If the Hawks should take this game, you can say series over. So I know this is their first playoff appearance in 3 years, so they took advantage on Saturday. Let's see if they can set the tone again tonight as they take on Edmonton, one of the two hub cities in Canada.
Yeah, for me, it's just a night of sports. Cubs at 7. We've got some basketball going on right now. Raptors and Heat at the half. Raptors have the lead, it looks like. Got a couple of marquee matchups on deck, Nuggets and Thunder, and the Lakers and Jazz to sort of wrap things up tonight. So it's a night of sports, and I'm looking forward to it.
Couch potatoes, since we cannot attend these games.
Well, yeah, that'll do, right? I mean, and look how disappointing the Heat have been. I mean, I expected more for them. They were kind of like one of those hot teams that were pretty hot before everything stopped. So, real quick, how do you guys feel about the Heat? I mean, this is they've kind of been disappointing too.
Well, we talked about this last week, right? Like, which teams would sort of benefit from this restart and which teams could struggle, and it's we're kind of seeing that play out with Miami because they were a team that got off to such a good start and was in a good position before this lockdown hit, and it seems to have sort of stifled that quote unquote momentum so far in this early restart.
Besides that Jersey incident with Jimmy Butler, I want to see how his leadership will affect the team, and I also want to see how Andre Iguodala will incorporate his fingers into that team as well, because that's a good young bunch down there in Miami. But can they compete against Milwaukee? I know they had success against them this year, but can they compete against the likes of Milwaukee, Boston, and Toronto? And we shall see come playoff time.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting, though, because as we reconvene, the playoffs will be starting, or at least they will be set. So it'll be just to see like those bottom teams fighting for those last spots. It'll be interesting to see what they do there. So it's going to be very interesting. For me, my final thoughts here is like you said, Jason, sports, and if the Hawks can kind of keep up their hot start, can the Cubs and the Sox keep up their hot start? And if more prominent players pull out in both college and pro football, that's another thing I'm looking forward to. I mean, I don't know. There's no deadline for the college. I'm sure within like the next month, we'll see if more big names, or if more take a stand, like what the Pac-12 players, what they're doing. So that's what I'm looking forward to. So anything else Anything else, you guys?
I'm good on my
I'm
end.
good. Yeah, I'm good.
All right. That was fun as always. You follow me at Keena McGee on Twitter, at Keena_McGee on the Insta.
You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at SidKid80. Once again, at SidKid80. That's SIDKID80. That's SIDKID80. You can read my prediction on this Hawks and Oilers series. I will not say that here. You can read my article at WARRegalradio.com. That's WEAREREGAL radio.com.
And you can follow me at Truth and Reason _ on the Twitter. You can follow the show's Twitter handle at 2NDCSCHI. And you can also watch me on my other podcast that I do with our good friend Derek Tate called The Go Route. We just had another new episode yesterday talking about players opting out of the season and how that affects them going into it. And we got our thoughts on a couple of guys getting paid as well, i.e. Joey Bosa, and a few other news and notes in the NFL. So check it out wherever you consume your podcast.
All right. You can also listen and watch this podcast on WeAreRealRegular.com. And of course, they also have a YouTube channel too. So you can listen, you can watch, watch our, weird backgrounds and me and my weird different color shirts. But yeah, so we'll listen. You can see everything here with a Zoom, thank goodness. But so yeah, so for Jason and Sid, I'm Lakeena. This has been Second Season Sports Zoom style.
Zoom style.
Sports is back. Holla.
All right, stay safe, guys, and wash your hands.
Yes.